Avengers Infinity War has arrived and it's time for the spoiler review. So a couple of things before we get into the review, guys. I can't really do a movie review for Infinity War without doing a spoiler review, so there's going to be lots of spoilers in this, so you have been warned. And also, I've never read a comic book in my life, I've never read a Marvel comic book in my life, so everything I'm going to discuss is from what I've seen in the MCU so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you do mention anything in the comics, or if anything got mentioned in the movie there's a reference in the comics, I wouldn't have got that myself. I know a few things about the comics only from what I've seen online, not from what I've read, because I haven't read anything. So if I have missed anything regarding the comics, I apologise. It's only because I've never read the comics. So Avengers Infinity War is directed by the Russo brothers, who also directed Civil War and The Winter Soldier, and it revolves around Thanos, who comes to Earth and goes to other places around the universe to collect the Infinity Stones. The movie stars almost everyone from the previous Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. So let's start with the Black Order, and first we'll discuss Cull Obsidian, who is also known as Black Dwarf, but they call him Cull Obsidian in this one for some reason. There's 4 members of the Black Order, excluding Thanos, but 2 of them don't get a lot of screen time, and that is Cull Obsidian and Corvus Glaive. So we'll talk about those 2 first. Cull Obsidian's this huge character. He's almost like the same build as Thanos, but he's a little bit taller, but he's obviously not as strong as Thanos, and he's not a leader. He's more of a follower, and every time he's on screen I felt like I just wanted to see him fight Hulk, and there was a few scenes, one at the very beginning as well, that he looked like he was about to start fighting the Hulk. It's something I would have liked to have seen, but it just didn't happen. He was a necessary character that basically didn't get a lot of screen time. On to Corvus Glaive. Again, he didn't get a lot of screen time either, but the times he was on screen I was actually interested in what he was doing. To me, Corvus Glaive looked like the weakest one in the whole Black Order. He was a good character. Anytime I seen him on screen I was interested and I liked the look of him as well, but he just seemed like the weakest character. I don't know a lot about him. I don't know a lot about any of these characters. And I just think he looked the weakest out of them all. Ebony Maw seemed like the most interesting character out of them all, and he looked like he was more powerful than Thanos at times. He probably isn't, again I don't know, but he looked like the most powerful. He could do things without moving a muscle, without breaking a sweat, and I liked his character. He was very interesting. I'd like to see him in more movies in the future. And I just think he's very interesting. I'd like to see his backstory and how he got his powers, where he's from. Again, I don't know much about any of these characters. He was just very interesting. The fight scenes that he was in were very interesting, and again he was taking out some of the Avengers just by moving his fingers. To me, Proxima Midnight was the best looking character. She was a big 7-foot tall woman, and I just knew she was going to fight the likes of Black Widow and Scarlet Witch. I liked the look of Proxima Midnight. I liked the dark eyes, the slight horns at the side of her. One thing I was slightly disappointed in Proxima Midnight was her ability to beat human beings. It's fair enough fighting Steve Rogers, going toe to toe with Steve Rogers, because he's obviously a superhuman, but when she was fighting the likes of Black Widow and Falcon, she was struggling, and I just thought she would be stronger than that, but she wasn't. So she was disappointing in that way, but she was good to look at, and again another interesting character in the Black Order. And this is when the spoilers start coming in, guys. Those 4 characters in the Black Order, the disappointing part for me was how easily all 4 of them were killed off. Cull Obsidian was just dragged along the shield in Wakanda. Is a pretty easy death. There was a scene from Aliens that Spider-Man wanted to reenact, and that worked with Ebony Maw. Again, he died dead easy. Proxima Midnight was kind of ran over by one of their own machines. Again, that was pretty easy. I think that Corvus Glaive had the most heroic death in terms of his side of the story. He was fighting Vision and Steve Rogers at the same time, and then Vision came up behind him and stabbed him in the back by his own spear. So he had the most heroic death, you could say. Let's move on to Thanos. Now, clearly, first and foremost, he is the best villain in the whole of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Straight from the first minute he walked on screen, every time he came on screen, the dread goes through everyone on screen and everyone in the audience as well. You just had that sense of sheer dread, knowing that something bad is going to happen, and something bad did happen every time he was on screen. Throughout the movie and throughout the journey of Thanos, he gives us reasons and explanations as to why he's doing what he's doing. He's one of these mad titans that basically goes to other worlds and he chooses half of humanity or half of that planet will die and the other half will get to live. And his reasons, they do sound strange, but to him they sound reasonable. He's basically saying that if half the planet dies, everyone will be able to live in luxury, and probably that would be the case. It's same in every world, but the way he goes around it is obviously an evil act. It kind of reminds me of Killmonger. He has his own good intentions in his head, but he acts them out in the wrong way. I like the relationship he had with Gamora. You can clearly see, and Gamora says it as well, he cares for no one but himself. But there is a scene, and again this is a spoiler, where he goes to get the Soul Stone and we see Red Skull. We find out eventually where Red Skull has been for the last 70 to 80 years. He's been stuck guarding this Soul Stone, and what he's told Thanos and anybody who goes up there is, if you want the stone, you're going to have to sacrifice someone that you love. And Thanos unfortunately looks at Gamora because she's the only one there, and luckily for him, she is the only person that he loves and cares for, and he sacrifices Gamora's life to get the stone. Even though we don't see Josh Brolin on screen, I think the character and the movements do remind you of Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin was excellent in this movie. The CGI for Thanos was brilliant. I think it was a lot better than the trailers. The trailers obviously wasn't finished. The finished product looked a lot better. There were a few dodgy scenes throughout the movie, not just for Thanos, but other characters and other backgrounds that weren't 100%, but overall the CGI was excellent. After the end credit scene, which we'll get on to later on, it says Thanos will return. That was a good touch by Marvel, because usually it says the Avengers will return or the hero of that movie will return, but in this case they say Thanos will return because he will return. And to me that was a fitting end, because it did feel like a Thanos movie. It didn't feel like an Avengers movie. The Avengers were in this movie, but they all had a little small roles. The biggest role any character had in this movie was Thanos, and that was excellent the way they done that, because you don't see the villain as much as you want to in all these movies, but in this one you got enough of that Thanos for it to be called a Thanos movie. I think it would be too much and maybe a little too early for every character or every good character to be in the one scene at the one time. I think that might happen eventually in the next Avengers movie, but I'm glad they split them up in this movie. They split them up into basically two teams. You had a team that were travelling through onto Titan, and that was Doctor Strange, the Guardians, Iron Man and Spider-Man. They were all fighting Thanos on Titan and other areas. And then you had the other characters that were on Earth, in Wakanda most of the time, and they were in Scotland as well. They were mostly in Wakanda, and that was the likes of Hulk as Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Black Panther, Black Widow, and the other characters basically. If I had to choose the groups that I enjoyed most watching on screen in this movie, it probably would have been Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange and some of the Guardians, because they were the ones that actually had to fight Thanos for the longer period of time. I just think that their scenes had more action in it and more comedy as well. I like the comedy between the Guardians, especially Peter Quill talking to Iron Man and Doctor Strange. I think they all wanted to be the macho man and the leader, and I think it worked out pretty well, and the comedy was just right for all those scenes. I remember a scene in the movie when they were trying to get the gauntlet off of Thanos, and they were literally all holding on to him at the one time, trying to hold him down, and it reminded me of Justice League, DC's Justice League. I'm not comparing them in quality, but I just think that the way Justice League done their scenes fighting the bad guy all at the one time was a bit half-arsed, but when you were watching the scenes when they were all fighting Thanos, you get goosebumps. You were watching it thinking, wow, this is amazing. I do remember watching this movie thinking halfway through it, it was already one of my favourite Marvel movies. It was that good. I think that everyone had a little scene to steal all the way through the movie, and that was good. We couldn't give everyone long scenes all the way through because the movie would last hours, but I think everyone that mattered, especially the ones that mattered most, had the right amount of screen time. But I just think that Thanos having the most screen time was the most important part of this movie. Particularly onto Spider-Man's suit, there was rumours that there was going to be the Iron Spider suit with the extra 4 legs, or however many legs it is. And it did happen. We got to see those legs a lot more than I thought we would. I thought we'd maybe only see it a couple of times, or maybe near the end of the movie when he needed them. They did pop out when he needed them, and he actually used them quite a lot throughout the movie. One thing I was a little disappointed in was the Hulk. I didn't see the Hulk as much as I wanted to. I think the best scene with the Hulk was at the beginning of the movie when he was fighting Thanos. Straight from the off we knew how strong Thanos was, because he basically picked up the Hulk and he was just about to kill him until Hulk was saved eventually by Heimdall. I think the beginning of the movie was very important to show how strong Thanos was and how serious he was. He killed off Heimdall very easily, he killed off Loki very easily, and again that was within the first 5 minutes. All the way throughout the movie there just didn't seem like any hope at all for anybody, and Iron Man did ask Doctor Strange, you know, what did you see? Because Doctor Strange was looking at all the scenarios in the future of how they could beat Thanos, and he told Iron Man that he's looked at 14 million ways to possibly win, and Iron Man said to Doctor Strange, you know, how many of those scenarios did we win? And he just said one. Now that one scenario, Doctor Strange has got in his head how that scenario needs to play out, and there was a scene that had the whole audience in silence, and that was when Thanos stabbed Tony through the stomach, and he was about to kill him until Doctor Strange said, wait, I'll give you the time stone as long as you spare his life. And he did do that, and then he was even more powerful, and Tony's like, why did you do that to save my life? And he said because he had to, but obviously he had it in his mind that this was the only scenario that he could potentially use and go through to defeat Thanos. But with Thanos having that stone, he only needs one more stone to complete it, and he can wipe out the universe, or half the universe, just with the click of a finger. Now this is where it gets even more surprising and shocking for me, because again, I haven't read the comic books, I don't know anything about the Infinity War comic books and what happened at the end. And at the end of this, after he's fighting everyone, he lands on Wakanda, and it was a lot easier for Thanos to hurt Steve and co in Wakanda, more so than it was when he was fighting Spider-Man and Iron Man, etc. He was coming, he was just throwing them everywhere because he had more stones. And then eventually Scarlet Witch has to do something that she doesn't want to do, and that is kill Vision. So she kills Vision, and we think that's it over, he can't get all the stones. But he's got the time stone, so he turns back time to save Vision, just to take the stone, and then he kills him again. Now the scene at the end when Thor eventually stabs Thanos with his new weapon, the Stormbreaker, that seemed like the end of the movie. Now before I get into that part, the way that Thor got his Stormbreaker was great, but I think that part of the movie maybe lasted a little bit too long. I think that could have been condensed into a couple of minutes, but they kept on going back and forward to how he was making the Stormbreaker and how other weapons were made as well, including the Infinity Gauntlet. But I think they could have just shortened that a little bit and made space for more battle scenes near the end. Again, it wasn't a big issue, I'm just saying that they could have easily made that a little bit shorter, that scene. But going back to that, he eventually gets the Stormbreaker and he slams it through Thanos' chest, and Thanos is like, you should have got me in the head, and then he clicks his fingers. Now because of that, half of the universe is getting wiped out. We can see that some of these Avengers are dying in front of our eyes, and it's quite an emotional moment, especially when it happens to Peter Parker right in front of Tony, because Tony's spared. But most of the Avengers, most of the superheroes are dying. So right in front of our eyes, you've got Black Panther dying, you've got Peter Quill dying, you've got Drax dying, you've got Groot, you've got Spider-Man. Almost all of the Avengers are getting killed, only a few of them are left. And it's quite an epic moment. And it was quite a sad moment as well, because this was the end of the movie, and you can see Thanos is all happy and he's sitting on his new throne looking at the sunset, and then basically that is the end of the movie. That's how it ends. And I think it was an epic way to do it, and quite a ballsy ending as well, because a lot of people might be unsatisfied with that ending. I wasn't unsatisfied, I thought the ending was epic and it was necessary. It was a necessary ending for that part of the trilogy. With choosing all these Avengers and all the characters to die in the way that they did, they all just disappeared into ashes. I think it would have been more epic and more dramatic if they killed them off during the movie, because up until then we didn't think they could die in that way, because when they were all dying at the end, you're thinking, well, they're dying just now, but they'll probably come back for the next Avengers if they get access to the Time Stone again, because that's obviously Doctor Strange's plan, and that's the only plan he thinks that might work. But I think if we killed them off the way they did with Loki, Heimdall and Gamora throughout the movie, getting killed in battle, we'd be thinking, oh my god, what's happening here? But with them all dying at the same time at the very end, it didn't feel as hard hitting, because we know that they're all going to come back, or not all of them, but some of them, if not most of them, will come back. And that begs the question, how far will they go back if they get access to this time stone? We know that they're going to go back to when they're fighting in Wakanda, because we do see a scene in Infinity War in the trailer where they're all running towards the camera. I don't know if that's a promotional scene. You see the Hulk in the background, Falcon, War Machine, Black Widow, and some other people. They're all running towards the camera. Is that a scene from the next Avengers movie? It could be. That could be when they go back in time, they're all back alive again, and they're giving it one last go to defeat Thanos. But if they're going to go that far back, are they going to go as far back as to save Gamora? Are they going to save Heimdall? Are they going to save Loki? We just don't know how far back they're going to go. And then we get the end credit scene. We see Nick Fury and Maria Hill. They're in a vehicle, and then a car crashes in front of them. Obviously, when they get out of the car, they look into the car, no one's there, so that person disappeared, and then they start disappearing. Nick Fury dies, and so does Maria Hill. Obviously they turn into ashes, and it means that half of those people are going to die as well. So half of New York's dying. There's a helicopter flying and just smashing into a building. The person in that helicopter is obviously dead as well. But before Nick Fury dies, he tries to contact someone, and the little device falls on the ground, and it says searching or contacting, and it turns out he's trying to contact Captain Marvel. And because half the universe has been killed off, or half of those planets have been killed off, that begs the question, with Ant-Man and the Wasp, are that whole cast just so lucky that they're one of the half that survive? Or is Ant-Man and the Wasp set before the Infinity War? It would make more sense if it was set before Infinity War, because no way that everyone in that vicinity is going to be alive after that. Overall guys, the movie felt epic from beginning to end. It was filmed in the IMAX, so it was a huge movie. The score made it brilliant. Everything about this movie was fantastic. The acting was great. The comedy was good. There was just enough comedy in it not to be sick of it. There's not much I can say really bad about the movie, apart from a couple of scenes that could have been condensed. That's it. Everything else was perfect. I think it's one of the strongest Marvel Cinematic Universe movies to date. I don't want to tell you how high up I think, or how high up I rate this movie, because I'm going to do a complete Marvel Cinematic Universe ranking from worst to best, and you'll find out where on that ranking Infinity War lies, but I can assure you it is one of the best. It's definitely in the top 5 of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. Anyway guys, that's my spoiler review for Infinity War. It is a little bit long, but you can't really discuss the Infinity War without discussing spoilers, because if you discuss the movie without spoilers, it's going to be 2 minutes long, and it's only going to be information that everybody already knows. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching again, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.